Carney's front bench looks very familiar. Carney speaks to a couple of media outlets. We got a little story on Bill C-18 from our representative here in the Okanagan with Stephen Fear on Bill C-18. Election results still in progress, and Trump visits the Middle East. All that and more on the Really Big Show. Iain Burns joining us all the way from the nation's capital in Ottawa. I'm here in Kelowna, a little bit sopped in today. Still a beautiful day in the Okanagan. Got nice wet weather. The forest needed for sure, and so does the flora and the fauna. And how are you doing out there in the nation's capital?
It's warm, that's for sure. It's about 25, but it's kind of there's quite a few clouds out there. Pretty cloudy.
And we're back.
But
like
yeah,
we
it's
were
warm.
off. We were off for a couple of days because our person behind the camera was off for a couple of days. So now we're back in the saddle, and I'm back from San Francisco. That was a great trip down to San Fran too. We'll talk about it if we have some time here as we move along in here. But let's get going right away with Carney's interview. He sat down there. He talked about what was going on. We got a clip. Let's play the clip first.
The King, your head of state, of course, has also invited Donald Trump on an unprecedented second state visit. Keir Starmer personally handed him the invitation in the Oval Office. All the while, he was threatening Canada's existence. What did Canadians make of that?
I'll be frank, they weren't impressed by that gesture. It was at a time when we were being quite clear. Some of us were being quite clear about the issues around sovereignty. I was not yet Prime Minister, but I was being clear on the campaign trail, and it cut across some of those messages.
There you go. He did the interview with the BBC, and they asked him what they thought of Keir Starmer's invitation to Donald Trump. And then, of course, they did a deal, too.
It wasn't actually the BBC, it was Sky News, which is owned by Comcast, which runs left-wing media outlets in the United States like MSNBC. And is pretty sort of left-wing as well, Sky News, or liberal anyway. Well, my immediate thought there, and that particular answer was, how do you know what Canadians thought about that?
Yeah.
I mean, how could he possibly know? I imagine he knows a few hundred Canadians in his social network, but that's not the whole country, is it? Which is a bit funny. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. I guess he feels comfortable enough to express that. He would obviously not say something like that about Donald Trump or somebody big and scary, but he feels like he can do it with the British because they're soft and pliant. But yeah, interesting. I mean, it was interesting for me to watch this because she's, whoever she is, I don't even know who she is, but she's sort of the perfect embodiment of the stuck-up British interviewer and the style that they adopt. Quite insufferable. I thought she was actually quite poor as well as an interviewer, but she did have some of the British journalistic culture embedded in her technique there, and it's actually a lot. It's a lot less forgiving than the Canadian method, because in Canada it's very deferent and polite and cutesy, and it's kind of like, actually, I think Canadian journalism in general, I think, is garbage, frankly. Sorry, Canadian journalists, if you're listening to that. I suppose I include myself in that now. But the British kind of, they press more and they attack more, and it's a bit more aggressive. And so it was interesting to see Carney subjected to that, though she was also pretty, like I say, she was quite poor, so she didn't actually have very many good questions to ask anyway, and I think he was a bit bored. But that the bit where she went on to the military, which we've got a clip of that, haven't we? Like, you would never see that in a Canadian interview.
Let's play that clip here, and then we'll talk about it.
We have confidence, full confidence in our defense relationship with the United States, as we do with all NATO partners.
I've been trying to configure this field for an hour, but this CRM sucks.
Got that.
Maybe it's time to stand.
Rommel. Well,
that was quite a transformation there by Carney, wasn't it?
That was chucked in the middle of it. But she did say that Canada has a tiny military. So
Is it not available now? Is that not finished yet? It's worth looking at.
Just see if you can get past the.
So you're
There you go.
confident that if you needed them, they would support you.
As they are confident that we would support them if they need us.
Okay, with your tiny military
It's
and a
not-
lot of broken equipment.
It's not that tiny.
Now, we're talking a lot about defence, of course.
There you go.
It's not that tiny. You could easily take that out of context, couldn't you?
I mean, that's you and I have been talking about that forever. Our military is undermanned, and even our full complement is small comparatively. We have 76,000 or 77,000 is our full complement, and we're not even at 55,000. And like our Air Force is 40-year-old planes. We've got I think it's 2 submarines or 3 or 4 submarines, I think, but they're all bought in a UK garage sale. They're all diesel submarines. Yeah, and our military needs lots of work. But the protection of the North is done by the Americans. It's not done by, or you could say NATO, but it's not done by Canadian military. I mean, they're up there, but I mean, the nuclear warships and that up there and the submarines are American submarines.
Yeah, it's done by the Americans for the Americans, while
Yeah,
the
for
Americans
sure.
tell us
Yeah.
that it's done for the Canadians, as if they care about Canada, when obviously they don't. They wouldn't give 2 hoots about Canada if it was in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or something like that.
Yeah, if
But
it was
anyway,
a country located in the middle of Africa, it probably wouldn't be even considered.
But supposedly, I was supposed to say thank you for that, like typical American bollocks, frankly, and the usual sort of double standard and hypocrisy of the Americans that they've been famous for their entire history. But at one point, I would say that she's obviously British. She's working for a British company. I mean, the British military is an absolute disgrace. It's a disgrace to the British people. It is the only thing that the British have that's even a little bit scary is, well, they've got an aircraft carrier, which doesn't really work. And they've got some more in the pipeline, which may or may not ever be built or ever work. And they've got some, sophisticated aircraft that they bought off the Americans and all that. But really, the only thing that the British have is nuclear weapons. They have the same system that the Americans use, the submarine system. But other than that, I mean, the British military, it's similar to Canada's. It's just been completely neglected for decades now. Really bad equipment, by and large, anyway. A racist Air Force hiring process that was recently exposed. The senior figures within the RAF, the Royal Air Force, had been intentionally denying and rejecting white male applicants to the RAF, and it's now a huge scandal that persists, where they're trying to figure out whether or not what to do about that disgraceful situation. And then the Navy, which is supposed to be, strong and mighty and all the rest of it. I mean, it's not even as good as Japan's. And Japan is theoretically anyway, is supposed to be like a nation of pacifists that don't dare pick up a gun because of what happened in the Second World War. So I don't know. I mean, the British can't exactly talk with their trash military, but I suppose, in fairness, Canada's military is even worse than the British military. So there's that.
Yeah, there's that. We got another clip here. Finally, Mark Carney sat down with Canadian media. He did an interview with CTV's Vassie Capellas, I'd say one of the best journalists in Canada. And she actually did a really good job in this interview, and she was a little tough on him, and he got a little arrogant. We're going to play a clip here.
You yourself, your book Values, for example, which extensively talks about a reorientation of the market around the climate imperative. I think Canadians had been asking throughout the campaign, and now, is this Prime Minister Mark Carney of values, or is it the Prime Minister of the campaign? Are you going to build that pipeline if the consensus exists?
First off, I've said repeatedly yes, first point. Secondly, that because I understand the need for that consensus, I'm a Prime Minister who can help create that consensus. You can't create a consensus on your own, but you have to drive processes that bring provinces along, bring the private sector in. Remember, I've got extensive experience. This is not just a concept to me. I have been involved in major energy projects for over 3 decades in the private sector, so I've got that experience. Bringing the provinces, working with Indigenous partners, putting it in place, as we have, billions of dollars of financing for those Indigenous partners, bringing in somebody like Tim Hodgson, who, when he was CEO of Hydro One, was one of the only major corporations to have a major Indigenous partnership program that actually worked. So we're bringing the components in. We have to deliver. Let me make another point, because I appreciate that you've read my book very carefully. At the core of the way I talk about the energy transition is the future of, including about Canada being an energy superpower, is the future is low risk. Canada's low risk is a business investment place. Low cost. We're getting the cost down, including the oil sands. The marginal production of is low cost, and low carbon. All three of those come together. We have the ingredients of all that. Let's get together and move on it. And it takes more than just one pipeline in order to accomplish.
And I do understand that point, but I think, like, in your book, multiple occasions, for example, you talk about the merits of a carbon tax. And now we have a different Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who says, the first thing I did in this very room was get rid of the carbon tax.
Got rid of the consumer carbon tax,
correct,
which is different than
the industrial side, but it's still a portion of the carbon tax scheme that existed in this country.
How much of the resources did that consumer, how much of the emission reduction did that consumer carbon tax?
9%.
Yeah, well, it's actually 6, but if you extrapolate it out to 2030,
if it went
it's 9.
as far as it was supposed to go, it's supposed to be, it's not nothing.
9%, it's not nothing. It's not much. It's not much, and we can do much better with different approaches, including collaborative approaches, which is what I'm looking to do.
So Canada endured that carbon tax that crippled our economy and put lots of people in dire straits for, in Mark Carney's words, not much.
Yeah, it's not good.
Is it not much?
Generally, that attitude is not particularly great, is it? I think that's going to need some adjustment if he wants to have a long career in politics.
I think somebody needs to press on that not much. Like, Canadians were screaming to end that carbon tax at the consumer pump there, that increased inflation and all that. And now we're told by this government that has the same actors in it that it was not much. And that they're going to come up with a different carbon scheme that will amount to what? Yeah. And if you watch, I suggest people go watch this full interview. Vasi did press a lot sometimes, and especially on the cabinet. And we're going to talk about the cabinet here in a bit, and we'll save that. She did press, though, on that. And well, we can just talk about the cabinet. Here's a video of the front row of that cabinet, well, the whole cabinet, but then take a look at the front row. That's good. A lot of familiar faces. Yeah. And then Vasi pressed him on that. It's like, you campaigned on change, and that front row of this cabinet, all the, the important positions, they're the same people. Shuffled, albeit shuffled. And he defended that by saying, oh yeah, they're in different positions now. Sean Fraser was housing minister, which was, a bit of a train wreck when we were in a housing crisis. He was immigration minister. We're a bit of a, immigration disaster for healthcare and housing, and he's been shuffled. Melanie Joly is now been shuffled because she said the economy is the most important thing. Where were they 10 years ago on the economy as the most important thing? She's now in charge of that kind of stuff. Chrystia Freeland's still there, even though CTV had been putting out there that Chrystia Freeland was not in cabinet. She's the Minister of Transportation. Does not even own a car, and she's the Minister of Transportation. So.
And is going to be responsible for possibly the costliest project in Canadian history with that high-speed rail line, despite having not really done the greatest job as finance minister. But I mean, let's be honest, it's not very nice, is it, to say this about people, but these are people that have control of our lives. So I guess that gives us a pass to say what we want. None of them are successful. They're not successful people. They're successful at getting jobs. That's a kind of success, I guess. But they're not successful in terms of results, They haven't achieved anything. Even the saintly, glorious Anita Anand, who is worshipped by everybody within the Liberal government and the Liberal media, what has she achieved? What are Anita Anand's great achievements in life? I mean, I keep hearing about her job as with vaccine procurement during COVID, was that a success? I mean, not by my reckoning, I don't think. Like, and champagne, like these people. I mean, it's harsh to say it. It really is quite a harsh thing to say about people who are like in midlife and they've devoted everything to politics. But they're failures. These are failures, except for Mark Carney, who, I mean, Mark Carney was quite successful in the first decade of this century as the Bank of Canada governor. He hasn't had many successes since then, but he's generally considered to have been successful in that. I mean, and I feel like I wouldn't say this if Carney didn't repeatedly say, "Look at all our experience. Look at my experience. Like we've done big things." And it's kind of like you keep pointing to your resume, and I just keep saying failure. There has to be, you have to have something to show for your time in office, you know? Not a single one of these ministers is really a success. And then he's brought people in, like the former mayor of Vancouver, and it's like, look, I'm poaching these great talents. Is he a success? I mean, not, and he's in charge of housing. Is housing in Vancouver, does that look good to anyone? Is that successful for anyone? Except maybe some people that have managed to sneak money out of the Chinese Communist Party's fingers and invest it in Vancouver, and now they've got a little $2 million nest egg. I mean, what on earth are we seeing here? And Mark Carney, something, because since we've moved on now, that interview, the arrogance, the superciliousness, it's poison, I think. And we during election night when it was obvious that they'd won, the Liberals, I said this, like, he will become unpopular a lot quicker than you might expect. And I think it'll be this superciliousness that gets him into the realms of unpopularity. I mean, I can't even remember which interview it was, but in one of these interviews, he was asked a question, and he responded with the word dynamism or dynamic, one of those words, and then there was a follow-up, and then I think it was Vasi actually, wasn't it? He said, "But does this mean change? Does this mean you're going to change?" And he went, "I think you'll find the definition of the word dynamism is change. It means change." No, it doesn't. Dynamism doesn't mean change. That is not. Look at the etymology of that word. It means power. It means force. Hence dynamite. But there's Mark Carney, confident as you like, slapping somebody down with a falsehood, you know, with his own ignorance. That is going to rub people up the wrong way. I mean, obviously, as a word nerd, I'm sat there thinking, like, what are you doing? You just look ridiculous here. But eventually, he's going to do it on something that more people know about, and he's going to expose himself as not only arrogant but often ignorant, which is a terrible, terrible combination.
She pressed him on the cabinet many, many times. That's what I advise people go watch that. She pressed him many times and said, this does not look like change. It's the same people, the same failed policies, the same failures in those roles. Although they're shuffled, it's the same people that she listened to explain why the carbon tax was so important. And then Mark Carney in one sentence says it wasn't important at all, that it had a small effect. These same people screamed about it and how it was so important to the Canadian and to the world that this carbon tax that Canadians, Justin Trudeau said that it comes before paying your rent and buying groceries. Do you not remember him sitting down and saying, like, if you can't afford your rent and you can't afford your groceries, you really need to focus on climate change and the carbon tax as the thing that's going to save this planet?
Well, she pressed him on that, didn't she? She's saying so many members of your cabinet. And even though you're saying you've got 24 new members, the real power in Canada is still held by Trudeau era ministers. Totally. It's Champagne, Fraser, Anita Anand, Melanie Joly, Stephen Guilbeault, I mean, to an extent, maybe slightly less so. He's been kind of demoted, but he's still obviously significant. This is all the Trudeau cabinet.
Freeland. And
not only that, but they all said how crucial the carbon tax was, while people were squealing in this country about cost of living, inability to buy food, and so on. And they kept on saying how important this was. And now Carney, like, he was being pressed by Vasi Kapelista, and Carney's kind of, you know, he's in a difficult spot politically, but he's just trying to kind of like waffle his way out, turbo waffle his way out, and pretend that everything is different now. And it's a tricky position to be in. But yeah, there's no doubt that they all talked about the carbon tax, not only as like morally good and politically necessary and all the rest of it, but they talked about it in absurd terms about how it was necessary to have a carbon tax so that there wouldn't be wildfires in places like Kelowna. just completely wrong, just scientifically illiterate nonsense.
Yeah. Of the 38 cabinet ministers, 12 are from the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, but he says that he has full representation across Canada. The only senior minister in there is the one that you just spoke about, is the Gregor Robertson, the housing minister.
Yeah, not much, not really a lot to recommend himself, but
Yeah.
I don't know. He's
And
he's being hailed now as the savior of the housing crisis. So
and then
let's see if he can rescue it.
we just put this tweet out there by Mark Towie. 38 members, because Carney, when he was appointed prime minister, leader of the party, he had a smaller cabinet and said that he was going to run a smaller cabinet. And lo and behold, here we go with a larger cabinet. Cabinet comparisons, they're up there on the chart there for you. So he has built, a large cabinet. And then Andrew Coyne put it out there and shows the members of cabinet in comparison to other countries. And there's Canada again in the lead.
What are the Swiss up to there? The Swiss are trimming it right back, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think that's because, but this is interesting though. But I think the reason for that is because Switzerland is a federation, isn't it? And the canton system, they're very independent, each one. So, I mean, does that sound familiar? It sounds like Canada, doesn't it? Which is obviously the same. It's very much a federal system.
The thing about getting appointed as a minister, it comes with a bigger, fatter paycheck. And if you look at this is from Andrew, 29 minutes, 10 juniors, same old, maybe half a dozen with any real role or responsibility. So it's just more tax dollars being shelled out for this large cabinet, and maybe some patronage stuff. I don't know. Like, it seems, when he was talking about how he had a slim down cabinet, and then lo and behold, here we go. It's a big.
It's
big
kind of
one.
hard to believe, isn't it? But a lot of it, it's not just patronage, as in rewarding people with money for having supported the boss. It's not just that. I think it's also kind of, a lot of it is about, like, it's almost like communitarianism. It's like identitarianism, or whatever you want to say, because it's like they just invent these cabinet positions, like Minister for Women and someone else. It's just they just make these ministries to pander to certain sections of the electorate. And I was watching CBC, and Rosie Barton, obviously, the queen of CBC. I'm pretty sure it was her, and it was her and the David Cochrane. They were talking about that exact job. I can't remember what the full title is. It's like Women and Equal Opportunities or something like that. And their only response to it in their universe was like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense because lots of women really came out strongly for the Liberals." Like, okay, so let's make a ministry for them then, because they voted for us. But I mean, it's not just that. There's also there's like Minister for Prairies Economic Advancement and things like that. It's like, can the Minister of Finance not just do that? I mean, obviously, surely the Minister of Finance should do it, or the Minister of Industry or something. Why do you have to like split it up into these things? And I think the reality is that it's because they want to appeal to those constituencies for the next election. So they want to say, oh, look, here's like the Minister of Prairies Economic Development. Put him on TV now. And that shows that we love the prairies. So vote for us, please.
We did get Stephen Fuhr, a junior minister now, Minister of Procurement, I guess, right? And wouldn't the Department of Defense minister handle that?
Of course. I mean, that's one of the main jobs of the Defense Minister, obviously. But there you go. I mean, that, because obviously Fuhr's from BC, and there's only a tiny handful of MPs in BC, or even like, west of Manitoba. So west of Ontario, really, not very many. So it's just an opportunity to get him in there. And I think as well, Fuhr like came out very early, didn't he, for Carney. I think he sort of his loyalty perhaps impressed Carney there, and he was really sort of passionately pro Carney. And we saw that with the Conservative Party with Tracy Gray, who's in the same seat. She came out very early for Pierre Poilievre, and when he won that Conservative leadership election, she got a kind of an important job, didn't she, within the party? So I think there's a bit of sort of that going on, sort of personal loyalty. But Fuhr does actually have military experience as well, doesn't he? And I guess
He does.
that probably is something that I think that will go down well with the public.
Well, why not give him
That it's actually somebody who might know what he's talking about,
why not
has a
give him
job, rather than some opportunist nobody, which is what most of them are.
why not give him the real job then, the defense minister job?
Yeah, probably because he's not that in on the. He's not that close to the heart of power, perhaps, and he's been out of it for 6 years or whatever, is it? Yeah, 6 years. I don't know. I think jobs like that don't just go to somebody that's just been elected, just sort of come back to Parliament. I feel like they tend to give it to someone that's been around a long time, like stalwart.
And there you go. We got a clip here from Stephen Guilbeault, Alberta's best friend. He's got something to say. So let's play this clip here.
Premier Smith says that she's still concerned that you're part of cabinet, and also the new selection of Mr. Blusen for the environment minister. She says it's too close of a tie to you. What do you say in response to that?
I think we will have to agree to disagree with Premier Smith. We think that protecting the environment, fighting climate change is important. Lots of Canadians believe that as well. It was a central element of our platform, and we will make good on our commitments.
The Prime Minister last night on TV seemed to open the door to potentially changing the emissions cap or the IAA to get projects built. What do you think of what he said?
Well, these are important conversations that we will need to have in the coming weeks.
Premier Smith is saying that you're anti-pipeline still. What do you say in response to her concerns just broadly about the cabinet, and how do you deal with national unity? How do you address that right now?
So on pipelines, people should remember that we bought a pipeline, Trans Mountain, and that is only used right now about 40% capacity. So I think before we start talking about building an entire new pipeline, maybe we should maximize the use of existing infrastructure. And the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as the International Energy Agency, are telling us that probably by 2028, 2029, demand for oil will peak globally, and it will also peak in Canada. So as far as I know, there are no investors right now, there are no companies that are saying that they want to build an east-west pipeline. And as you know, these things are built by companies, not governments.
Are you against the...
There you go.
It's hard to be spoken to, which is in effect what that was. That was Guilbeault speaking to us, the Canadian sort of electorate there. It's hard to be spoken to like that, isn't it? As if you're an absolute moron, as if you are possibly the stupidest person on the planet. That's what I felt like there when Guilbeault was addressing me via the medium of cameras. Because when he says things like, oh, there's nobody interested in building a pipeline in Canada, so, you know, they have to be interested. Why aren't they interested, Steve? Would you like to answer that? It's not because oil isn't profitable. It's because of regulations that you put in place that made it impossible to build pipelines. Like, just be honest. Be honest with people. Again, I feel there's nothing that I find anyway. Certain people, there's nothing that will upset them more than being treated like a moron, and that's certainly what I think he was doing there.
The big thing, we just watched an interview with the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, with Fassi Capellas, and saying he will build a pipeline. Several moments later, here's Stephen Guilbeault, the one that is, you know, like led this carbon tax thing, saying that nobody even wants a pipeline, so why would we build a pipeline?
Well, he's also on about peak oil. How many times? Yeah. I'm not a greybeard necessarily. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've read massive articles in the Financial Times, The Economist, New York Times, whatever, telling me that peak oil is around the corner, and they're always wrong. So I mean, look, if you want to dodge something, this is the glorious advantage of being in government. If you want to avoid doing something that you really don't want to do, like Stephen Guilbeault doesn't want to develop Canada's natural resources, there are so many ways you can do it. It's like that you've got so many options. And this is what I said, and you said before the election, when Carney was talking about pipeline, well, not pipelines, but he was talking about natural resources. It's not so much about saying, oh yeah, I want to export more and I want to build up our natural resources. It's not so much about that. It's more like, how willing are you to go to the mattresses, as they say, on this? How willing are you to keep fighting this in court and upsetting all kinds of environmental activists, upsetting maybe even like entire provinces like Quebec and BC? Like, how committed to this are you? Because there will inevitably be 100 or more obstacles put in the place of any government that tries to develop Canada's natural resources. So, I mean, they're kind of laughing, aren't they? That they have so many options and so many excuses. It's like the position that the Liberals are in, that some say that they're in, which is that they hate natural resources or they hate oil and gas, let's say, but they don't want the public to know that, so they don't want to say it clearly. They're in an excellent position, aren't they? If that's true, if that's truly how they feel, because they can pretend to get stuff passed and say, "Look, we're trying," and then
Well, that's exactly
but
what you
really
said.
not try hard enough, not really do it, and
That's
then it looks like, oh well, thwarted again, darn court. What can I do?
That's exactly what you said when we were talking about this, that they're likely just to give it the old college try. And whereas the other, when Paul was talking, that was going to be their main focus. And this sounds like already there's a conflict there with what Carney's saying and what Stephen Guilbeault is saying on building a pipeline. And I'm sure Daniel Smith has just watched that comment and is definitely not happy with the comment that just came out of Stephen Guilbeault's mouth there. I mean, we're not even like a couple of days into this, so. Moving on though, Kelowna's MP representing our area here promises to raise the issue of the Backfired Online News Act. We did this story. Stephen McNall did this story here, and he reached out to Fear. Congratulate him on his appointment, as well as being picked for a junior minister position. But he pressed him on this over and over and over again. You don't have that image there. Pressed him on this, on when he was going to bring this up, because he says that he stands by his comments that this is failed and is really hurting news outlets. And he said, I'll talk to him when I get a chance. And then Steve pressed him again. He said, well, as soon as I get to it. The story's on Kelowna now. It's well worth going reading this story. This should be a national level story that has everybody's attention. Media across Canada is suffering, dying, and also definitely because of that, subject to handouts from the government, and that keeps them kind of like on a leash with government, because there's one party supporting them, and we're going to show you this Holly Doan's Blackhawk story that the Winnipeg Free Press received about $2.8 million in taxpayer subsidies last year, and they were actually running campaign slogans, basically part of their own marketing, right? Like Canada Strong and all that stuff, and just like this shows you how bad this is for Canadian media.
Yeah, well, again, we can give ourselves a pat on the back, really, because we noticed this ages ago. A long time ago, we noticed, and we said that this subsidies given to certain media outlets in Canada was quite obviously going to make them, reliant, and it was going to make them more favourable to the Liberal Party, just as with the CBC. And sure enough, you can find ample evidence of that being the case, can't you? Which is why it's it's a very poisonous feature to introduce into your democracy, I think, that the state will subsidize certain media outlets. And of course, they'll scream as loudly as they can that it has nothing to do with coverage. Like, there's no quid pro quo, guys. We're just doing it for the love of journalism. They might say that, but I mean, inevitably, at the very least, it opens them up to that criticism. And I think in many cases, and Holly Doan has mentioned many, not just this one, she's on the ball with this, isn't she? In many cases, you see that, the Liberals do kind of get rather favourable treatment. And the sad fact is, they probably would anyway, even without these subsidies, because by and large, journalists are some of the most liberal people you'll ever meet as a job. As a sector of the economy or whatever, as a set of employees, a set of workers, they must be some of the most liberal people in Canada, really. And it's also true in the US, where they're very liberal. It's like this is something that's replicated across democracies. So they probably would have already been quite keen on Mark Carney and the Liberals. But when their livelihoods are also on the line, I mean, in a way, it's like, can you blame them? I know they're kind of sacrificing their principles, but it's a tough time.
Yeah.
Everybody is looking over their shoulder a bit, aren't they? So
it's a sad place that the media's been put in, and where they have to kind of basically cheerlead one party because the funding will get cut off, because Bill C-18 has choked off half the traffic on all the outlets, including CBC, because people go to social media for news, and the news outlets, including CBC and including us, can't put our news on there. We've lost half our traffic, more than half our revenue, and we're not compensated like the rest of them are. We don't get the funding. You know, credit to Stephen Fury, he has written a letter to the Liberal government and saying that that's unfair, and that that Kelowna Now should be also considered. But we just need Bill C-18 repealed. We need to get back the audience that we earned, and funding for media should not be taking place by the government. And it was supposed to be a temporary measure. We'll see how long temporary is. I mean, the CBC is a different thing. CBC is a public broadcaster, and I guess is entitled to funds as a public broadcaster, but then they're not supposed to be competing with the other broadcasters out there or news outlets too for advertising. They've crossed that line as well. So they're kind of like taking from all over the place. And CBC should not be subjected to one party winning. If they're going to continue with the CBC funding, it should be outside of political or partisan politics. Totally.
And I think, you know, if you want to talk about like political strategy and all that kind of thing, I think Pierre Poilievre's decision to attack CBC and promise to abolish the English language version of CBC was like a gigantic mistake, a total, like, colossal error, a real, just pointless, really. I suppose he did it to like motivate his base or whatever, but the base already loved him. He didn't have to do that. And he just kind of like, he just offered his neck to the axe, really, didn't he? There was just no point in doing that. It's kind of crazy.
In Canada, there is no yin and yang of national media, really, like that has big voice. Like there's CTV, CBC, and Global, and a national brand. And they're all very similar. Like CTV and CBC basically can put their tweets next to each other, and they're going to be the same thing on every given day. Again, Vasi Kapelis is one of the best journalists out there, and is more unbiased than I've seen in most CBC. Like Rosemary Barton, you cannot say she's unbiased, and not a spreader
she would say
and a spreader of misinformation and disinformation. She's the queen of misinformation and disinformation. At least Vasi Kapelis comes to work and tries to do an honest day's work. I think she should have Rosemary Barton's job, if anybody should have that job.
Well, probably not from the perspective of CBC executives, because she'd be singing from the wrong hymn sheet, wouldn't she?
Yeah. This is a Holly Dome Black Luck story. Borrowers lack self-control, and this is from the Bank of Canada. It says a third of payday borrowers have self-control issues, you know, like they want to eat and stuff like that, I guess, right? So a third of high-cost borrowers suffer from self-control issues, are willing to borrow at high interest rates during bad times. Well, maybe they want to eat something. Do you know what I mean? Like they talk about it, that's their problem. Yeah. And so they've...
It's terrible language, isn't that? Households that suffer from temptation. What?
So conclusions, they analyzed 100 million payday loans and transactions, and there you go. And they're just saying that these people are subjected to... Yeah. It's absolutely kind of like ridiculous that, you know, this carbon tax put a lot of people in a really bad spot. And now you're being told, again, we go back full circle to the carbon tax, that it really had no effect, or an effect that's not worthwhile doing it.
I think it's even broader than just the carbon tax. It's the biggest one for me, and the one that I always try and bring up in discussions of Canadian economics, is the GDP per capita, you know, which is ultimately a combination of immigration growth, completely, like, wildly out of sync with the Canadian economy. Like, way too many people, given that the Canadian economy was effectively stagnant. So that was always going to shrink GDP per capita. But then also questions about investment and productivity and so on, and the inability of the Canadian economy to get into gear, it seems, for numerous reasons. But I think that's the big deal. The big deal is, I mean, obviously inflation's sky high, and just people aren't really been paid very well to start with. But then they're not being given pay rises either. So it's kind of, obviously they're kind of falling down the ladder, aren't they? With each quarter of the year, each inflation report, they're falling down the ladder. And I don't know. I mean, the payday loan thing. So I mean, it's very silly to do that. Obviously, if you just want to buy like a PlayStation or something like that. But I feel like, based on some of the stories I've read and some of the bigger sort of like statistical information that we have, I think you were right. Actually, a lot of people are doing this for much more ordinary things like groceries, which is
Well,
just like insane, isn't it?
people are maxing out their credit cards to buy groceries. And this is what I'm saying. Like they've ignored this, and just like this consumer carbon tax has crippled many Canadians' ability to meet their monthly obligations. And this election is not over. There's 3 more recounts to go. We continue to, and then some of these are being settled by like one vote. They flipped one block seat back to the Liberals. Maybe that's one reason why Mark Carney says that he's not willing to look at either talking somebody into crossover or like forming any alliance, because he believes maybe he's going to get those 3 seats.
That one is so strange. That's Terrebonne, isn't it,
Yeah.
in near Montreal? That is such a bizarre one because somebody's come out. I don't know if you've seen that story. Somebody's come out and said that they sent off of their ballot, and then Elections Canada made a mistake and ended up returning it to them. So that's one vote. I can't remember. I assume that person voted for the bloc. I can't even remember, but still, that's a vote, isn't it? It was an election won by one vote. And then somebody saying, look, Elections Canada rejected this ballot. Like, the election is therefore null, surely. So I think that one's not finished yet. I don't think that's finished yet.
They're talking about even doing a by-election for that one, to runoff if they're tied.
No, I mean, I almost feel like that they should just do that anyway, because there was something like 800 or 900 rejected ballots.
No.
It doesn't stand up to the sort of levels of probity that we expect in a proper functioning democracy. That I think they should call a by-election. Yeah, I mean, it's because people are going to lose faith. People are already losing faith in democracy. This is going to have a catastrophic effect. But also, what you were saying about Carney not reaching or he says he's not trying to reach across the aisle to headhunt NDP MPs or whatever. But like the NDP says that he is. They're saying that he's making phone calls. So I mean, who do you believe? It seems to me that he is doing that, but he just doesn't want to. He doesn't want to announce it to the world.
Yeah, and so then no more blue wall, red wall, electoral reform. And I'll let you talk about this one.
Well, they've done what they often do in Canadian journalism. I'm sorry to say, my brethren in Canadian journalism, but they've just like called up a couple of professors and let them speak, and then written a story about it as if that's news. I mean, you might as well just go to the University of Alberta's publications tab and just read that. I mean, but anyway, it's a University of Alberta professor, at least that's one of them, who comes out and says if there was proportional representation, then you would have like Saskatchewan and Alberta on like, just if you looked at the election map, it would be lots of orange and red, not just all blue as it is now. And he goes on and says, like, they won like a third of the vote in Alberta, but I can't remember what the percentage is. They only won like 15% of the seats, or less, or something like that. But this is theoretical. We don't know if that's the case, because if it was proportional representation, the voters would know that. Voters aren't stupid. They would know it was proportional representation. They might not vote for the same party, so that might not happen. It might not be the case. Like, everybody knows. Everybody's been in a situation where they've lived in a seat in a riding where one party is just guaranteed to win. So that kind of changes your perspective, doesn't it? You don't necessarily, like, sometimes you vote for a party you wouldn't usually vote for, on like a protest party or something. That wouldn't be the case in proportional representation. So it's purely theoretical anyway. So it's ridiculous that they've said this. But then also it's like, it's abuse of first past the post, isn't it? That's such an unloved system, first past the post. But take a look at countries that have proportional representation, like Germany. Germany is a sort of catastrophically dysfunctional country on the political level. They still don't have a government, really. They had an election ages ago. It's like, and they have to make these alliances with their ideological opponents. So right now in Germany, you've got the main Conservative Party in alliance with the main Socialist Party or left-wing party. What's the point of that? What's the point of having a government made up of like completely opposing forces? It's not going to go in any direction, is it? You can't make any sort of decision. So obviously, first past the post has its advantages, and sometimes I feel like in this story is another example where they don't list the advantages of first past the post. So it's just basically all about how great PR is.
We got lots to get to.
That's not necessarily true.
We got lots to get to, so we're going to kind of quicken the pace here. Mark Carney going to Rome to the inaugural mass for His Holiness Pope Leo the 14th. So there you go.
And he is His Holiness, because Mark Carney's a Catholic, so he gets to mix business and pleasure together.
And Donald Trump went to the Middle East, and he had a big welcome there in Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince himself went out to meet Donald Trump at the airplane, and they had the horses, the Arabian stallions, guiding in his motorcade as he arrived at the palace there. Lots of big names at this investor conference in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia committed to spending $600 billion, and they've also said that they're going to get it to $1 trillion in those conferences, and lots of big names there. Alex Karp there from Palantir, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, Elon Musk from Tesla and SpaceX, and they were all showing off their products at this conference. Lots of good stuff. If you get a chance to go and read some of that stuff, it's well worth your time, or watch some of this stuff. There was some big stuff happening there. And then it sounds like there's a deal that was made with Syria there today as well, and as he continues on his tour in the Middle East there.
That is the biggest news, I reckon. Syria is led by a former jihadist who's in charge of an Al-Qaeda-aligned terrorist group who just managed to pull off a coup in Syria about 6 months ago. They've already been seen, their soldiers have been seen committing pogroms against religious minorities. And Donald waves in, calls this guy attractive, and says he's going to lift all sanctions off him. So just yet more American inconsistency and American betrayal of principles, which you should be familiar with by now.
He also extended an olive branch to Iran and said that you have two choices. Stop pursuing a nuclear weapon, or face the wrath of America as well. So he said, but he wants Iran to build, and so it was again, it's well worth listening to what was going on there. And what they've done in Saudi Arabia over the past couple decades is nothing short of, like, from a building perspective. They built the whole city, I think it was in 180 days. They had 40,000 workers in it. Well worth going to watch. Some of the stuff they built in Abu Dhabi and stuff like that is just bloody incredible.
It's amazing. I mean, it's similar to China. It really is quite remarkable what you can do if there are no rules, and all that matters is what the big man says.
Well, you know what I mean?
In an authoritarian country.
I was just in California. I spent a week down in California in the Silicon Valley of Palo Alto, Cupertino, and all those things, and I went to the headquarters of all the, most of the Mag 7 companies. And the roadway system down there in California is top notch. Like, I mean, they have reflectors in all the lanes. It's all brand new pavement, and it's just absolutely amazing. And when I drove back from Calgary to Kelowna, we don't even have lines painted on the roadway. Like, I mean, it's actually dangerous. There's no, you can't see visible lines, like on whether you can pass, when you can't pass. And again, Canada's Trans-Canada Highway, the #1 highway in Canada, is not 4 lanes all the way across Canada. It's still a treacherous road there between Kelowna and Calgary and many parts of it.
Yeah, and it's inexcusable. I mean, like I was saying, whenever that was, a couple of days ago, well, I can't remember when it was now, but the fact that it's also single lanes in parts of the prairie provinces, I mean, what on earth is that about? It's not like it'd be hard to build extra lanes there.
And in Chrystia Freeland's own words, the Liberal government spent the last 10 years virtue signaling and on identity politics. Not building roads, because remember Stephen Guilbeault said that the Canadian government will spend no more money on building roads. Well, that's evident, because we don't even paint the lines. Like, that's actually dangerous for people, not having lines painted on the road there, because some people don't know when they can pass and can't pass. It's inexcusable. And here we are in Canada, and they talk about, Mark Carney is now saying Canada's going to be the leader in the G7. Donald Trump, in his, we're past 100 days now, has committed from large companies over $8 trillion of investment in the United States. And that's not showing you what other people are doing. And we've talked about this many times on this show. There's a giant sucking sound in Canada, and that's capital fleeing Canada because of the regulation, the high taxation, and the uncertainty. And it's going to the United States because of lower taxation, and it's being attracted there for lower taxation and less regulation.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just the possible. You're not going to want to go to a country where you just can't do things, are you? I mean, that's something that my sad homeland suffers from as well. It's like, why would you go into a jurisdiction or whatever, a country where you just can't build anything? You try and get going, and it's like a million lawsuits and loads of different interest groups who come and harass you and try and stop you doing what you want to do. And then if the government is also hostile, the sort of all the federal government or whatever, the central government, then there's just no point. You might as well just go, you might as well go somewhere like UAE, like you're saying, because then at least you'll be able to do what you want to do.
I recommend people, if they go to California, to go in that San Francisco Bay Area there, in the Silicon Valley area, and just look at these large companies: Google, Apple, Tesla, Meta, and just take a look at their just the hubs that are around there, and it's just. I mean, those are some of the most powerful companies in the world, and they're all attracted to that area. And Texas is becoming something similar to that now too, with SpaceX and a lot of Tesla there too. You need to attract powerful industry that give out really good jobs, and that's not happening here in Canada right now.
And also, it's important to stress like the extent to which we are actually at the mercy of international capital, if I can put it in that sort of sinister way. We really are at the mercy of these businesses and these people that have the magnates around the world. Like, if they decide not to build their factories or whatever, or bring their money to the Canadian economy, then they will just take it somewhere else. And that really is like a zero-sum game. We lose and the other person gains.
I think the government and some of these ministers, including the BC government, need to prioritize as opposed to just knee-jerk reaction to, and a group, and a special interest group that starts screaming, and then they spend all their energy there instead of doing what's needed. Because British Columbia is really suffering from lack of investment and projects here, and our credit rating has already been hit. So there you go. Employed Canadian job seekers' biggest fears: not getting a raise, slow down in work because of the economy, change in team structure, company reducing due to economic climate, and losing their job. And there you go. And we got a fan there, yeah. What's that?
I'm saying they're not happy. The workers.
No. There you go. And we got a fan on our YouTube. They love us. They said that we have great content, and we don't know how they pay the bills. We have so much money and don't know how to pay the bills. Nice. You can't say anything nice, then move along there. Sonny.
Well, you know what that means. Obviously, you know what that means. I disagree with some of the things that you've been saying. Therefore, I'm going to launch a dumb ad hominem attack and hope that people are stupid enough to not see that.
There you go.
Unfortunately for you, I'm not that stupid, whoever you are.
Porter Airlines adding flights here to Kelowna. There you go, and they're going to have some direct flights to Toronto. They're going to actually do that water gun salute there as they land for the first time on Wednesday here in Kelowna. But let's move on to markets. So, markets, stock market, it's been up there for a little while, ever since the China trade thing, just complete reversal of the stock market, right? And some of the Mag 7 stuff has just exploded to the upside. And right now the market is, like I said, it's just chopping around here. But big change ever since the China pause on tariffs, right? When the whole world was ending, and all of a sudden the world is not ending. And we may be on the cusp of a big boom. And we're seeing that in gold as well. Gold is off. And again, once the market goes up, gold will suffer as it's a safe haven asset. And gold is kind of like off there. You can see that double top there almost, right? So it's not looking great for gold right now. Because money is pouring into the stock market again. And Bitcoin, look at Bitcoin. We talked about Bitcoin back when it was just starting to climb out of that 80,000 range. And we said it looks like it's going to go challenge its old highs. And there it is, banging on the door. Banging on the door. It's up over 100,000 right now. And it's 103. Basically, right now at this moment, 103,544. Right when I pulled this chart. Canadian dollar. Sadly, I think the more talk when you get Stephen Guilbeault and them starting to talk, and more separatist talk which is going to come out of what Stephen Guilbeault says out of Alberta, you're going to see more and more weakness in the Canadian dollar because it needed somebody to say that resources, our greatest asset. We've said this a million times on this program. It's our greatest asset is our resources, our oil and gas, our LNG, and all that stuff. And it doesn't sound like that's where we're moving towards. So there you go. And then it looks like Justin Trudeau's government there was when they were trying to push the crickets. That doesn't look like that's going so well too. The Liberals pledged about $8.5 million to build some cricket food, and nobody wants it. So there you go.
Who would have thought that, eh? Who could possibly have predicted that that would happen?
Yeah, and then we just got an image here of the, like this, the big motorcade coming in. They actually had jets escorting in Air Force One and all that stuff. It was a big pomp and ceremony there for it. But executives from BlackRock, Palantir, Blackstone, Citigroup, Qualcomm, IBM, Tesla, all kinds of, like companies were there, NVIDIA, and they're all doing deals as well. Sounds like Tesla did a big deal for Cybertrucks there too as well. And also robotaxi is going to be available in Saudi Arabia as well. Right now,
this massive meeting has been applauded by people that define themselves by despising Davos, which is just the same thing, basically. Of course, it's all right when Trump does it, though. Of course, it is.
There you go, and there you go, and then a big deal signed today from Boeing. Boeing actually not doing so well in the news for a long time, but Boeing up this morning because of this deal when Qatar just signed an agreement to purchase 160 airplanes. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal for Boeing. Boeing has been in the news for all the wrong reasons for a long time here.
I mean, it's kind of very strange, isn't it? I'm guessing that Trump pushed that or something like that, because Boeing isn't a very good it's not a very good company, is it, frankly? If you've got a choice, if you were in procurement, if you were Stephen Fuhr or something like that, would you buy Boeing or would you buy Airbus? I mean, I don't think I wouldn't have to think for more than a fraction of a second. Airbus is vastly superior to Boeing. I don't know why anybody buys Boeing.
We got an image. We got a little video to play. We're in our tech section now, and we got lots in the tech section here. We're catching up, but check this out. That's good. There you go. So that's Optimus doing the funky dance, and then he looks like he's connected there, or he had a safety thing on. But there's a lot of other videos out there that have him completely untethered, and that's in real time. That is not sped up. So Optimus is definitely very mobile. Even the front, there's a bunch of video out there too that shows the dexterity of his foot. The toes are moving, everything, and Optimus is a real deal, and it's reflecting in Tesla stock. Tesla up huge again this morning. It's been up the past few days. I think it's climbed up from the, like the low 200s, and it's well over, banging on the door of the 350 mark right now. So there you go. And then we got another clip here to show you. This is kind of cool. And this is another one of Elon Musk's company, the Boring Company. And I've been in the tunnel in Las Vegas. We're going to play this clip here, though. There you go. So this is just like an autonomous drill that actually goes and builds roadways underneath the surface. And like I said, I've been in the Las Vegas one, the Loop, and they actually extended that now. That the Loop now runs out to the airport, so you can actually use the Boring Tunnel to get from the Las Vegas airport to downtown Las Vegas to the convention centers and that. Pretty wild. And Europe has not been, Europe has used this as well. They've cut through mountains instead of going up and around mountains. They've cut through mountains with similar type technology. And
under the sea, under the English Channel.
Under the sea, there was a movie, wasn't there, Under the Sea? There you go. We got another clip here for you. And this one's kind of wild. We'll talk about it as soon as we play it. Or that's not working? It was a robot that's fighting fire. We had a clip there, but it's not working. There's a robot fighting fire. And then Tesla put out this tweet saying that it's coming in June, supposedly with the robotaxi network, your Tesla will be able to earn you money. So you can actually send your car to work, and maybe you don't have to go to work. So there you go. I was actually talking to a doctor. Here's a personal story. I was actually talking to a doctor, and he said one of the patients said that he's too stressed out to go to work because he's scared that he's not going to find a parking space. Well, this solves it. Hey, this solves it right here. You don't need a parking space. The car can drop you off, and you can have less stress when you get to work.
It would be superb, that, wouldn't it? But also, I mean, it's the safety aspect is what I like the most, I think. And also the time, like freeing up time to do other things. It would be pretty great.
And here you go. This is the motorcade being escorted by Cybertrucks here in Qatar. I'm going to play that clip. There you go. There's lots of talk about a lot of police forces around the world and military things advancing the use of Cybertrucks very safe. When I was in California, I did go to the Tesla factory, the Fremont factory, and I did end up taking a Cybertruck out for a drive as well. I thought my wife would hate it, but she absolutely loved it. And she drove it, and it's crazy. Yeah, pretty wild. There you go. Cybertrucks all over the world. And we were there for a longevity conference. We were there to see Peter Diamandis talk about longevity and health. And this AI here that's coming up predicts your biological age and cancer outcomes from face scan. AI is going to do so much in longevity. It's crazy. With your face scan, it uses deep learning to scan facial features and calculate your biological age, which reflects how fast someone is aging internally as opposed to just their chronological age. There you go. And it actually tells you, we'll be able to tell you what your outcome would be if you're facing a life-threatening illness. How about that?
That's
Crazy.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, so when we were at that conference, so much information was shared. I mean, we could probably do a whole show on what I learned at that conference. But hey, here's the big tip for everybody that's listening, even the person that is trashing us. If you listen to this, maybe it'll help save your life. 90% of your longevity and your health, like health span is better than lifespan, health span, is controlled by 3 main factors. You want to guess what they are?
Diet, level of exercise, and neurological cognitive stimulation.
Sleep. Yeah, so diet,
all right, sleep,
exercise, and sleep. There you go. Those 3 things you have within your control. But a lot of the questions in the audience were, okay, like what else? Because they don't want to, they were, like some of them were very overweight and that didn't want to put in the work for the exercise or the diet, and they just wanted something more magical.
There is something, isn't there? It's called Ozempic.
Yeah, and it has a lot of side effects that are maybe not so magical. But there you go. Microsoft's going to lay off.
I keep hearing how one of its side effects is apparently longevity. Ironically, it's like somehow some wonder drug that cures everything.
Microsoft's going to lay off 7,000 employees as it focuses on AI development. There you go. NVIDIA is going to supply about 18,000 AI chips to Saudi Arabia. They made a deal where they're there. And here's one that's just blows me away. Canada appoints its first Minister of Artificial Intelligence. We got our first one, and it is a former CBC employee that was fired for his art dealings with Mark Carney. And now Evan Solomon is now the Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
There you go.
The minister, or the person heading up AI in the United States, is a former AI guy that sold a tech company for well over billions of dollars, and that's his experience. Not sure what Evan Solomon's is in the AI world.
Evan Solomon now, in a few years' time, he can say, look, I've got experience in this kind of thing. I was Minister of Artificial Intelligence. Yeah, what have you done?
Exactly. Maybe he can do more art dealings. There you go. He also worked for Eurasia Group, where Mark Carney's wife works. And also Gerald Butts is the vice president at at Eurasia Group.
Wow, those are some really, really strange coincidences, aren't they?
Great connections get you great jobs, eh?
Yep.
And another failure for the automotive industry in Ontario. We're going to play a little clip here for you.
The reality is today, Honda is stopping production. Like this is all halted. I don't know if you got the memo, but look, it was Ontarians, Ontario taxpayers that invested $2.5 billion into this EV project so we could create good jobs in the sector. Honda promised 1,000 more jobs for people in Alliston. Ontarians also invested in Brampton, in Windsor, in Oakville, where production has also stalled and put jobs at risk. The Premier likes to talk about attracting investment to Ontario with tax breaks and subsidies, but when those companies break their promise to workers and to communities, he just throws up his hands in the air. The Premier allowed the market to dry up with his reckless decisions. Back to the Premier, if you won't bring...
There you go. The EV industry and I don't understand why they give billions of dollars to $15 billion EV investment there, and to companies that don't build EVs. Like they've ostracized Tesla, the really only EV maker in the world other than the Chinese EV makers. They basically demonized Tesla, and Northvolt went bankrupt. Honda shelved that EV project. Stellantis halted production and shifted jobs to Illinois, and there you go. And then also Honda has moved CRV production to the United States.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we had this sort of conversation? Anybody in the news industry, how many times has this conversation been had? Where it's just like, as sure as the sun will rise and set, either a provincial or the federal government will give billions of dollars to some massive corporation, and then that money will go nowhere, and the corporation will say, "Whoops, see ya."
Well, Doug Ford,
this is not going to work anymore.
Doug Ford says that he's going to hold them accountable.
I mean, that's Doug Ford's personality, isn't it? That's his political persona, and that's what he's. But I can't help but say and think that his political sort of reputation has taken a hit from this Honda one, because that was huge amounts of money, and he just him and Champagne, they promoted that like it was like the king was in town. It was just like the greatest thing that's ever happened, and then obviously it's fallen to pieces now, so it kind of makes him look a little bit silly. Obviously Champagne doesn't make him look silly, he just gets a promotion.
And we've said this a million times, we'll say it one more time: unless the Canadians, our Liberal government, drops the EV mandate, there will be no auto industry in Canada. But that remains to be seen. And then in the United States, the head of the EPA says they will roll back the start-stop mandates on new cars. I'm not a fan of that. I was actually in California and I drove a gas car, because I usually drive an electric car. I drove a gas car that did that stop-start thing, and the lights are long in California, and it's hot, and the air conditioner actually stops working. You get that smell, when the air conditioner kind of like stops working or freezes up, and you get that, and it gets really hot and muggy in the car all of a sudden, because the air conditioner, there's no pump to run, so obviously the air conditioner quits. They should shut the air conditioner off. It's better off than pumping out this humid air out of there, and so that's stopping in the United States, but I'm sure that'll continue here. You must have that in your new CRV, the stop-start thing.
It kind of, it goes to like EV mode, I think, at that point. It goes to the hybrid battery mode. But I guess if you're at a light for ages, then the battery, because the charge doesn't last very long each time. So yeah, you would probably have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just another example, isn't it, of these? It's almost like they handed climate change, like the climate change portfolio, whatever that signifies, whatever that means. They handed that to like the pettiest sort of HR personalities that they could find, and they said, "All right, go on, just go and make life as miserable as possible in the tiniest, pettiest ways, and justify it by saying that the planet's going to melt if they don't do it." So then we lose plastic straws, the grocery bag fiasco that continues to make life miserable.
Yeah.
And things like this, the carbon tax, none of it did anything whatsoever to help the planet or to reverse the effects of climate change or slow the heating of the planet. Obviously, didn't do anything, but just made you miserable.
So I was in California, like I said, and I went to Starbucks to get my coffee. And here in Canada now, you go to Starbucks and you can't get a stopper anymore. You can't get that plastic stopper. They give you a piece of glue, basically. They stick this glue on top there because who doesn't need more glue, right? You have a paper straw for some glue, and then you get the stopper covered in glue. California, one of the supposedly the greenest, cleanest areas. You know, they got the biggest loss. Guess what I got at the drive-through? Double cup, without even asking for it. Every time I went there, double cup and a plastic stopper. Every grocery store I went to, plastic bags. And I'd say half the times I ate out in the restaurant there was plastic straws versus paper straws. And we were there for six days. Guess how many days I went to convince my wife to go to In-N-Out Burger.
I already guessed 6, didn't I? But I wasn't right.
Yeah, 5 because we got in late that first night. So yeah, so 5 days. If you haven't ever had an In-N-Out Burger, they are definitely, and the price is reasonable as well. I actually found a lot of the prices to be fairly reasonable in the United States, and some of the shopping was like still with the exchange was better than what we have here in Canada, which is just blows me away how that could be. Right, so
yeah.
Actually, they had an inflation number that I watched on CNN because they didn't like that. The inflation number was the lowest it's been in, I think I can't remember now, 5 years or something like that. And they're just like, this is defying all the economists. And here it is. You ready for it? The inflation was likely affected by the price of gasoline, which is now under $2 a gallon in the United States. Energy is the main input in almost everything we do. And lo and behold, if the energy prices go down, guess what else goes down with it? The cost of everything. So there you go.
Well, we're going to see soon, aren't we, the effect of getting rid of the carbon tax on inflation. I imagine it's going to be quite big.
There
the
you
first
go.
full month.
Yeah. So there you go. And then we got a couple of memes here to show you because Trump was given a Boeing, a 747 by the. And now they're saying he accepts. This is one where he gets a Star-class destroyer from the Emperor of Palatine. Who doesn't need one of those, eh? And then
Trump definitely does.
And this one is one that is definitely in the news a lot right now. Jake Tapper. This is a good one because they put out his book, right? He co-wrote a book. And Jake Tapper uncovers startling evidence that Biden's decline was covered up by none other than Jake Tapper. There's so many revelations in that book that they were actually considering putting Joe Biden in a wheelchair, and that he was incoherent in many meetings, staring out blankly, and that the reason that George Clooney wrote that letter, saying that he needs to step down. Is because he didn't even recognize George Clooney and that was his friend. Didn't even recognize him at the event, and obviously Barack Obama put Clooney up to it as well.
He was in a terrible state, and obviously still is in a terrible state, isn't he?
But
he does have moments of lucidity.
A lot of the media is
obviously you can't govern when you're in that state, can you?
A lot of the media trying to cover its ass now by saying, we were trying to find out. That's what Jake Tapper's saying. Like, if you go watch, they actually Fox played a clip of Jake Tapper defending Joe Biden on numerous times, and even getting super angry about it. So
that's the thing. They made it like it was kind of like a faux pas, didn't it? It was like a rude. Yeah. It was like, oh dear me, you're so low class. You're talking about his cognitive ability. As usual, it's the usual thing. They did it with COVID as well.
They did it as a threat to democracy, and that's a famous word you heard from the Trudeau Liberals all the time too. Everything that they didn't like was a threat to democracy. Don't attack that institution because they raised interest rates 19-fold. That's a threat to our democracy and our institutions. You know what's a threat to our democracy and our institutions? Bill C-18. There you go.
We don't want to talk about that, though, do we? We
That's
don't like talking about that.
that's the real threat. How's that, right?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest threats to democracy as well is just good old-fashioned incompetence.
Yeah.
If the people in charge of your country are incompetent year after year after year after year, and they keep failing again and again and again, but they stay there, they hang around, and then they fail some more. Eventually, people are going to say, like, what is the point of democracy then? If this is what it gets me, just like poverty and failure.
The Liberal Party's their campaign slogan could be "Fail upward."
Yeah, that's certainly true for the likes of Champagne. I feel like he is a very amusing fellow.
I would say,
and also Anita Anand, because of her like huge reputation. I find that quite amusing.
Stephen Guilbeault and Chrystia Freeland definitely would be campaigning for front row honors in that as well.
Yeah, definitely Chrystia Freeland. That's one. I sometimes forget her. I don't know how. But Guilbeault can excuse himself and be excused because he's an ideologue. He's an activist. You know, activists don't have to play within the rules of like actually succeeding at things and having results, because the religion is more important than the results. So okay, I get it. I get it with him. It's based on faith. But that's not true for Chrystia Freeland. Chrystia Freeland is not like a religious maniac, is she? She presented herself as like the numbers woman. It's like, oh yeah, I'll fix this. I know what I'm doing. I used to work for the Financial Times. Thank you very much. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would suggest to people keep their eye on trade relations. If a bunch of deals get done, and it looks like they are going to get done, and with what's going on with AI and Optimus and stuff like that, the stock market could be in for a rally that is beyond comprehension. But what do I know?
I just hope Canada's invited to the party.
I think Canada uninvited itself from the party. Uninvited itself. I mean, Vasi Kapel's asked some questions about Trump too, and say like, you know, do you trust him and stuff like that? And he's really couching his answers there now, because I think he overplayed that hand. And I think, you know, in that interview, if you watch that full interview, I think the meme that comes to mind for me is that's the moment that Canada found out it'd been had.
Yeah, or maybe the beginning of the end of the easy ride that some would say Carney has had, in that he's been treated with a lot of deference and not really scrutinized in quite the way that he maybe should have been in a democracy.
Yeah.
So I think it might be the beginning of the end of this idea that he can do no wrong and he's some kind of superhero, because he didn't really seem to know what he was talking about from my perspective there. There's a lot of turbo waffle.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's the same policy. It's the same people, and I've said this over and over again. It's the same people, the same policies, and maybe with a little dancing to win the election. And then, you know, like it's going to end up being this carbon credit thing and carbon taxes. And I can tell you right now, people with large sums of money will not be investing here in Canada, sadly.
Well, if that's the case, Carney's not going to be around very long, because the whole, you know, the Canadian people giving the Liberals another go after a pretty poor 10 years, I think it was predicated on the idea that Mark Carney was some kind of economic genius who was going to fix everything, and we're going to notice things. We're going to notice improvements in our lives. So if he doesn't deliver, then what is he? He's just a guy that dissembles in interviews when he's asked specific questions by journalists, and is a little bit arrogant, sort of supercilious. That's not going to keep him in power. He doesn't have any sort of like gravitas or any sort of like character that appeals to people. It's all based on the idea that he's going to make them better off.
The Canadian government, and especially Chrystia Freeland, ostracized Tesla and said Tesla was like the evil empire and needed to be destroyed, and we need to like, right now to buy a Tesla in Canada, it is I think about $20,000 to $25,000 more because of the tariffs. And these are the same people that want you to buy an EV. And the only EV worth really buying at this moment, other than Chinese EVs, is a Tesla. And the only one that makes money at selling EVs is Tesla, because Ford and GM aren't making money selling their EVs. And
well, no, really, are the Chinese, because they fiddle with them so much, and they subsidize them to such a crazy extent, don't they?
So they've demonized Elon Musk to the point where again, they're pushing forward this Telesat that doesn't have satellites, and here we have, they don't want Starlink, which they made a deal so they can get internet. You can get at 5 minutes out of the box. You can have internet anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter if you're in a remote spot in Ontario or the Arctic, for that matter. You can get internet, and they've taken that away. So they've denied Canadians all that technology. And if Optimus comes out and all of a sudden raises the per capita GDP in the United States and any other country that is using those robots, and Canada doesn't even have access to that, Canada's just going to get poorer and poorer and poorer as far as technology goes. And it's just ridiculous. Hopefully Mark Carney has the brains to fix and mend those relationships with some of the biggest tech companies in the world. Like, look with Facebook. Meta is one of the largest corporations in the world. And we picked a fight with Meta that we're losing. Meta's stock price is through the roof. And the Canadian media, the public ones, are in the toilet. So I don't understand.
And they're not talking about it because they're being subsidized by the government.
Yeah. And then, Freeland, Christina here said that Freeland said we needed nukes to protect ourselves from the U.S. And also, she said that she talked to a 4-year-old and there'll be tanks rolling in the streets. And it's just such craziness. And if you were one of those people that got sucked into that, it's time for you to use your common sense and maybe even take a look at what's happening in the United States with the media when they covered up for Joe Biden. We're having the same thing happen here, where the media definitely has not been honest with Canadians. There you go. We're honest with you, though, because we don't get any money. So
we're so honest that Chrystia Freeland listens to us because she wants to know the truth.
She wants to know the truth. She doesn't even own a car, and she's the Minister of Transportation. Go figure.
Well, don't think she knows how to drive a car, does she? She tends to go a little bit too fast.
There you go. Maybe she needs a Tesla. Anyway, that's our show for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. And then we'll see you tomorrow. And have a great day. And stay safe out there.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.